Good evening, everyone. Never has our country been more divided than it is on the issues of border security and immigration. Heated debates on national television and compelling arguments on both sides of the political spectrum had made it difficult for me to understand the real problems. And it was this feeling of loss and inability to see the complete picture that sparked my curiosity about how the border looks and the need to analyze the impact that the border has on both residents and immigrants. And there was, of course, only one way to find out the truth: seeing it myself. Thus, was meant to be a short weekend trip to a segment of the Texas-Mexico border and back, ended up turning into a multi-year photography project that has led me to 5 different borders across 4 different continents. Now, you may ask, why did I become so invested in exploring these controversial hotspots? Well, I started out of pure curiosity, but I kept at it because of the people I met and the inspiring and often heartbreaking stories that they shared with me. That's right, it was the people. Because people are what make a country great. People are what define the ideals and dreams of a nation. People are the building blocks of civilization, because it is their beliefs and their contributions that define a nation. But most importantly, they are the ones that constitute and decide what that nation stands for. And so to solve this complex problem of border security and immigration, critics on both sides need to focus on one thing: perspective. They need to look through the eyes of those directly affected by the crises at the border, whether it be through the eyes of Border Patrol agents and immigrants at the Mexico border, UN soldiers and war veterans at the Korean border, or the religious faithful at the Israeli borders. Now, before I continue, allow me to give you a sense of what these international borders look like through my eyes by sharing with you some of the photos that I made while I was there. Beginning close to home, the US-Mexico border passes through mountains, hills, sand dunes, cacti fields, plains, rivers, canals, cities, and oceans. This is an example of the rugged and hilly border terrain at Nogales, Arizona. Mountains such as these serve as natural barriers along much of our southern border. The Rio Grande marks the border between the US and Mexico along much of the Texas border. This road is FM 170, an absolutely stunning scenic route leading to Big Bend National Park. In stark contrast to the US-Mexico border, the Korean DMZ is a 160-mile-long, 2.5-mile-wide demilitarized zone, rich in wildlife and devoid of human development. This is the Joint Security Area, or JSA, and is the only place inside the DMZ where North and South Korea conduct all of their affairs. The borders of Israel with her neighbors is a geopolitical hotspot in many areas, with the remnants of landmines and bomb shelters along the Syria border, desert and fence along the Egypt border, and the Dead Sea and mountainous terrain along the Jordan border. And as the residents along the various borders I visited provided insight into their everyday lives, I got a sense of the border situations firsthand and the impact that the border has on residents, immigrants, federal agents, and citizens began to unfold. For you to truly understand these borders, I would like for you to meet some of the people that I encountered and to hear their stories. Imagine that the cartel has threatened to take away your 2-year-old daughter to sell for trafficking. So you had to make the impossible decision between giving her away or floating her across the Rio Grande in the hopes of adoption. This was the first story I heard at the border from a state trooper, and really shook me to the core, and just proved that there really is a humanitarian crisis down there. Meet the agents who serve in some of the most geographically isolated locations in our nation. Their missions are often mentally and physically exhausting and dangerous, as the person they're about to apprehend could be a pregnant woman, a child, an innocent asylum seeker, a drug dealer, or a criminal. And it is equally possible that they may bump into a dead body. It is a hard job, and it should come as no surprise that some agents pay the ultimate sacrifice protecting our borders. They deserve our respect. Meet the immigrants who wait in long immigration lines every single day just to earn minimum wage across the border in the US. To them, it's simple math. It's $8 a day versus $8 an hour. Many spend days in the unrelenting heat removing weeds in farms. I felt a lot of empathy towards them. Meet the young daughter of a drug dealer who grew up thinking that she was the daughter of a car dealer. She recollected how the authorities closed in and organized crime ended up killing many of her family members over owed drug debts. A police officer in Nogales told me that there, drugs fly on kites. Drugs are stitched inside dogs and sent through the fence. Drugs are hidden in vehicles that pass undetected through Border Patrol checkpoints. It is a real problem. When I asked the agents and residents at the border how to solve it, many of them had a similar answer. Stop the demand, and the supply will automatically stop. Meet an elderly Israeli woman whose father was stabbed to death by an Arab in an act of senseless murder. With tears in her eyes, she further recounted the massacre incident in which many Jews were killed. However, in times of tragedy and in moments of despair, there is always a ray of hope. And she also recounted the story of a Palestinian friend who housed numerous Jewish refugees in his home to prevent them from being killed. Lastly, we have all heard from the media and politicians, but I got a very different and unique perspective from someone who endured the US-Mexico border journey herself. I would like for you to meet an immigrant who crossed the border decades ago. According to her, while some flee their home countries due to the atrocities of war or poverty, others are manipulated into undertaking the arduous journey by cartels who only want to profit from their crossing. Many of these immigrants don't know what to expect along the way, are deprived of food and shelter, and are dropped off at the border with nowhere to go. She believes that education is the key to this problem, and that needs to start in countries far beyond our own borders. Inspired by my journey, she voluntarily gave us a 4-hour tour of her town until midnight, taking us to places we would not have otherwise dared to go. And along the way, she shared her story of how she crossed the border illegally and struggled to make ends meet. She won my heart. As I became more invested in my travels, I began to fear the unknown less and explore far beyond what I was originally comfortable with. And if through my experiences, I can change one mind on either side of the political spectrum, then I've achieved a worthy goal. And there's still a long way to go. In the future, I'm hoping to immerse myself into one of the caravans coming to the US to try and understand what it is that makes these immigrants travel hundreds or thousands of miles. If we can understand that root cause, then we can begin to make the world a better place for everyone. My advice for you all is simple. Don't fear the unknown. Put your best foot forward and follow the facts wherever they lead. But most importantly, look at things from others' perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, gaining perspective is gaining knowledge, and knowledge is power. And if with that power, you can begin to change course for the greater good, then let's make sure that that change starts with you. Thank you.